Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. If you could make your way into the room and find a seat, the servers are serving us, and it's a delicious lunch. Good morning, and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club on an absolutely beautiful day in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you very much for being here. My name's Jane Scott, and it is a privilege and an honor to serve as the President and CEO of the Metropolitan Club and to welcome you here on behalf of our Board of Trustees and our Program Committee. Just a few housekeeping things. For those of you who have not been here recently, we do live stream all of our programming. And we have been doing that since March of 2020. That changes our timing a little bit. Your lunch is going to be served at 11:30 when you find your seats and the servers find you. And right at noon, the live stream will kick off. So there's 150 some people in the room today, but you'll be joined by hundreds of other folks who are watching via our live stream, both in terms of channel. Some of the TV stations that pick it up, as well as the Columbus Dispatch and the Metropolitan Club's YouTube channel. So all of you in the room will have lots of company right at noon. So regarding masks, we are wearing our masks when we're up and walking around, and obviously you cannot wear your mask while you're having your lunch. But please, as a courtesy to those folks who are seated at your table, please put your mask back on after you've finished your meal. We appreciate that. It also is good optics because the camera will scan the room occasionally, and we want to make sure that everyone knows that we're behaving and we're wearing our masks and being safe. We all love our cell phones, but we also have learned that they ring really, really loud over the live stream, so please make sure you silence your cell phones, but feel free to take photographs and post them on your social media and make sure folks know that you're having a good lunch and a good discussion here at the Metropolitan Club. So thank you so much. And we know we have a lot of guests in the audience today. And one of the things that we have done, and you're always welcome to come back as guests. Of course, we'd love you to become members. But one of the things that we do that's a little special for our guests, and we're happy to reintroduce, is the Barnes and Thornburg guest giveaway. And we have a really cool prize today. Great big swag bag from AARP, who's one of the Metropolitan Club's new big sponsors. So, all right, I'm going to draw, so see who is going to win this nice swag bag. All right. How about from Nationwide Children's Hospital, Lydia Prenger? Lydia? Lydia, come on up. I haven't looked at what's in here yet, but it's pretty heavy. Thank you. You're welcome. There you go. So Eddie Pauline from our Board of Trustees will be back with you in about 10 minutes to kick off our program. So thank you once again for being here and enjoy your lunch.
The Columbus Metropolitan Club was founded in 1976 by 13 women leaders who wanted to be included in the community conversation. I am Sally Bloomfield, and I was one of those 13 women. Having been left out of men's clubs that focused on community issues, it was a priority for us to make the club 100% inclusive.
Today, CMC presents public policy forums every Wednesday at lunch with average attendance of more than 200 people. I'm Tony Bell, and I frequently attend forums, which are open to everyone and present relevant, current, and newsworthy topics. I'm grateful that CMC is nonpartisan and presents many perspectives on every topic.
I'm Jane Scott, President and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club. CMC is open to everyone. We invite you to explore the personal and professional benefits awaiting you at the Metropolitan Club. Welcome to CMC.
Welcome to CMC.
Welcome to CMC.
Welcome to CMC.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. Founded in 1976 by 13 visionary women leaders, CMC's mission is to connect people and ideas through community conversation. From its beginnings, CMC has welcomed everyone. I'm Eddie Pauline, President and CEO of BioOhio and a member of the CMC Board of Trustees. I also serve as the chairperson of Worthington's Community Relations Commission, which is involved in this effort today. Let's begin our meeting by introducing our newest CMC members. Greg Davda, Sr. with Optimum Technology. Greg, you want to do a wave? And our newest lifetime member, Beth Crane. Welcome to CMC. CMC depends on members like you and its sponsors. We would like to invite your organization to consider becoming a CMC sponsor. Half of CMC's annual revenue comes from sponsors whose generosity supports the not-for-profit Columbus Metropolitan Club. Please see CMC's very own Jane Scott or Lainey Cupthorpe about becoming a sponsor. Jane, I think, is seated up here, and Lainey's in the back of the room over there. And thank you to today's forum sponsors, AARP Ohio, Central Ohio Community Improvement Corporation, the Columbus Foundation, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, Move to Prosper, Nationwide Children's Hospital, The Ohio State University, United Way of Central Ohio. Thank you all. We are also grateful to today's forum partners. A full listing of today's partners and today's forum attendees can be found in your forum flyer on your table. Today's CMC live streaming is presented by the Emergency Response Fund of the Columbus Foundation in partnership with the Columbus Dispatch and PNC. Thank you all. You can learn more about CMC, register for events, join or renew your membership, purchase a virtual seat, or make a donation anytime at columbusmetroclub.org. At today's forum, Building Inclusive Communities, we'll hear about the myriad ways housing affects a community, from quality of life, ease of transportation, employment, healthcare, and access to good schools. But before we hear from our distinguished panel, it's CMC's honor to invite Michael Wilkos, Senior Vice President of Community Impact from our sponsor, United Way of Central Ohio, to the podium to introduce our speakers. Michael, the podium is yours. Here you are.
Thank you, Eddie. The census recently released 2020 data. Almost half of Ohio's growth occurred within the city of Columbus. Almost the other half occurred in Columbus's suburbs. and there was a tiny little bit in the other 78 counties in the state. The city of Columbus just experienced its largest numeric increase in population in our history, adding 119,000 people in 10 years. It was our fastest growth rate in 70 years. And we grew faster than Dallas, Houston, Phoenix, or Nashville. I'm reminded about what makes a city work by author Anna Quinlan, who said, "The experiment of cities is how close can rich and poor live before the fabric completely falls apart? How close can you put ethnic groups that don't really like each other much? How much can you promise about a rich and privileged future and then not really be able to deliver before they rise up and say enough?" And the answer here is over and over again, is that the fabric becomes tattered, it even becomes torn, but the fabric survives. As a city, we have never been more diverse, more influential, and more complex than right now. In the past year and a half, Columbus's fabric has become tattered. It even became torn. But there are more construction cranes in the sky than ever before, and we will continue to grow. Will we welcome new arrivals? Will we build socially, economically, and environmentally stable communities? And every day at United Way of Central Ohio, we and more of our 90 funded partners, we think about the 400,000 Franklin County residents whose promise of a better future is still without reach. Please welcome today's speakers. Richard Kahlenberg, Senior Fellow, the Century Foundation. Lorianne Feibel, Council President, City of Bexley. Calvin Cooper, CEO and co-founder of Rhove. And our host, Dr. Kim Campbell, Director of Enrollment Management at Mount Carmel College of Nursing. As always, you can learn more about today's speakers in your forum flyer. Before we begin the conversation, I would like to invite Richard Kahlenberg to the podium. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. And it's wonderful to be with you all. I have, over the years, I've spent many wonderful times with people in different communities talking about various public policy issues. And but for the last, 20 months or so, I've been in hibernation, like a lot of you have been. And so this is the first time in a long time that I have been able to be in person with a group like this. And I'm so excited. I'm not going to have to worry about forgetting to unmute. And the other wonderful thing is, I guess, as a speaker, is that none of you can turn off your videos, go do laundry. You're kind of stuck listening. So this is a great opportunity. It's also wonderful to be here in Ohio, which is a state that contains the multitude of political diversity within one state. And what I want to start with is, I think, an area of common ground for all of us, which is that no matter your political ideology, you probably want better opportunities for low-income students. We will have arguments back and forth about whether adult poverty is the cause of society or the cause of the individual, but no one would argue that low-income students, low-income children, who are in no way responsible for their economic condition, everyone will agree that they deserve better. Now, the research is clear that one of the very, very best things we can do for low-income students is to give them a chance to live in middle-class or mixed-income communities and attend middle-class or mixed-income schools rather than high-poverty schools. Raj Chetty of Harvard University, for example, found that when low-income children move before the age of 13 to a higher opportunity neighborhood, Their chances of graduating from college increase by 16%, and their lifetime earnings increase by 31%, which is the equivalent of $302,000 over one's lifetime. So the question then becomes, what is blocking the opportunity of children to have access to safe neighborhoods with strong public schools? And many of us, I think, assume that it's simply the workings of the free market in housing, that some people earn more money, can afford to live in more privileged neighborhoods where the schools are often stronger. But I think what that misses is that, in fact, where people live has been socially engineered by government for decades now. And the primary issue that I want to talk about today, and that I hope we'll get into in the panel discussion, is the way in which zoning laws inhibit opportunity. Zoning laws that prohibit the building of anything but a single-family home. So you cannot build in a duplex or a triplex or a modest-sized apartment building throughout many metropolitan or neighborhoods within metropolitan areas in the country, and that's true in Columbus as well. And I call these policies the walls we don't see, because most of us don't spend a lot of time thinking about zoning. Everyone can understand that when, in the 1960s, black children were prohibited from attending racially integrated schools in the South, that was wrong. Many of us recall Norman Rockwell's famous painting with 6-year-old Ruby Bridges, a young black girl trying to attend an integrated school surrounded by these enormous FBI agents, because there were screaming mobs, white mobs that were trying to seek to block her from attending the school. But I would argue that, today, in 2021, local government policies have erected a series of walls around the various communities that keep low-income children and their parents from having the opportunity to enjoy these safe neighborhoods and good schools. And we don't think much about it. We don't think there's any comparison to what Ruby Bridges was going through. Now, researching this issue, I was particularly interested in what's going on in Columbus for a couple of reasons. In part, the issues of exclusion are particularly acute here. So some of you may know that of the major 50 metropolitan areas in the country, Columbus ranks second in economic segregation, the division in where low-income people live and where wealthier people live, according to a study by Richard Florida. Very relatedly, Raj Chetty at Harvard found that Columbus ranks very, very low in terms of social mobility. So of the 50 biggest metropolitan areas, Columbus ranks 45th out of 50th in the likelihood that low-income children will have the opportunity to grow up to do better economically. And Chetty tied those two issues together. The economic segregation and racial segregation, he finds, has a direct link to declines decreases in social mobility. So how did Columbus get into this predicament? Well, I think we decided not to do PowerPoint, but I'm sneaking around that. We've got a couple of maps at your table that kind of explain the issue. And if you can start with the map that looks like this. So this is the on the left-hand side is what's known as the redlining map from the 1930s. So in the green areas, the federal government agreed to insure mortgages and invest in those communities. And in the red areas, it refused to. And many of you are probably familiar with this term of redlining, that those are the communities that were predominantly black that the federal government refused to insure mortgages in. Now, the map on the right shows in dark blue areas those regions of Columbus and Franklin County today that are zoned for single-family homes only. No duplexes, no triplexes, no apartment buildings. It's illegal to put those types of units there. And these are, in large measure, areas where working-class people have less access and less opportunity. So if you can flip to the second set of maps now, you'll see a similar depiction of what are the high opportunity areas in Franklin County and the surrounding area. So the Kirwan Institute at Ohio State University has done really pioneering work that try to identify communities that have strong schools, access to jobs, and other amenities, and found that in the dark red you see the higher opportunity areas, which are often off limits to working class families because there are fewer multifamily housing opportunities there. And then the final map shows where African American people live in Franklin County. And you can see in comparing that to the Kirwan Institute map that black people in this area tend to be concentrated in the areas that have the least opportunity. Now, all of this is very discouraging, but the other big reason that I was attracted to Columbus was that you have here a really innovative program that is trying to do something about these problems. It's called Move to Prosper, and it gives a small number of single mothers the chance to live in higher opportunity communities like Dublin and Gahanna. And one mother I interviewed for a report I wrote about Columbus and Move to Prosper, Kiara Cornelius, told me that before Move to Prosper, she was living in South Columbus in a dangerous neighborhood. Her mother lived a few blocks away, and yet when Kiara Cornelius's children wanted to go visit their grandmother, she would have to drive them because she felt like it was too dangerous to let her kids, or to walk with her kids to the grandmother's house. So she wanted better for herself and her family, like all of us, and was, through Move to Prosper, able to move to Dublin, where she feels safe and where her kids are thriving in the schools. Now, Move to Prosper is a small program. It has 10 families, and it serves in some ways as a catapult of sorts over the walls that have been built by government through zoning policies. So the question becomes, what additional things should be done? And I want to, there are a million things that should be done, and I'm sure we'll get into it in the discussion, but just let me list 4 steps forward to kind of set the stage for some more discussion. First of all, I think it'd be great if Move to Prosper were expanded so that there were more families who had the opportunity, like Kiara Cornelius. Second, there are a number of communities throughout the country that have begun to tear down those exclusionary walls. So Charlotte, Minneapolis, the state of Oregon, the state of California have all said we're going to legalize duplexes, triplexes, and as it's the beginning stage, in order to allow for more people with of more modest means to live in higher opportunity areas. Now, liberals tend to like this as a form of social justice and racial justice, but many conservatives have applauded these efforts too, because they see zoning laws as, in essence, a form of government regulation that is stopping property owners from doing what they want on their own land, and that this change is, in essence, a form of deregulation. Third, Ohio could outlaw what's known as source of income discrimination. And I know Bexley's been a leader on this, so we're going to talk more about that issue in a moment. You know, if someone like Kiara Cornelius, who is African American, went to a landlord and was told, you know, I'm not going to rent to you because you're black. Thankfully, that is now, you know, since 1968, that has been illegal. It is perfectly legal in most of Ohio to say, if you have a housing voucher, I don't want you in this community. I'm not going to rent to you. And so that's another thing that could be done here for reform. There are 19 states that have adopted protections for source of income or outlawed source of income discrimination, and that's something that Ohio could consider. Final thing is inclusionary zoning. And I have been driving with Kathy Fox around various parts of Columbus the last couple days, and I've seen all these you know, amazing new apartment buildings that look beautiful, that have sprung up in recent years. But in many communities, there are efforts to make sure that at least some portion of the low-income and working-class community can participate in those types of housing complexes by setting aside a percentage of those units for low-income and working-class people. So, final thing I'll say is that the current system of government-sponsored exclusion is bad for everyone. You know, it's bad for everyone in this room when we're not tapping into the talents of families whose kids have so much to offer, but are now constrained to high poverty schools that lots of research suggests are on average going to be less effective. But these state-sponsored rules also deprive more affluent kids in suburban areas from the benefits of the educational benefits of diversity. We all know that we learn from one another all the time. And when affluent students are segregated in their own enclaves, they miss out on the opportunity to learn from diversity. We're just beginning to come out of a pandemic where really many of the heroes have been working class people, grocery clerks, paramedics, and others who've seen the rest of us through this terrible time. And I'm hoping that this discussion today will be part of an effort to open up the doors to those individuals and their children to enjoy the opportunities that so many of us have taken for granted. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kim Campbell, as you heard, and I'm honored to be with you for this important and timely discussion. So my first question is really going to be directed at Lorianne. Lucky you, right? So Lorianne, if you could share with us, as president of the City Council in Bexley, why do you, as a local elected official, support inclusive communities? Just curious, and a little bit of background about this work.
Thanks, Kim. It's so good to see you. We've missed each other a lot. You know, I get to talk about two things that I am so passionate about today. And one is Bexley, Ohio, and the other one is Move to Prosper. Bragging about Bexley is something that most Bexleyites love to do. And our Bexley Community Foundation really does a good job. They love to say that it's the best place to live, work, learn, and play. And recently, they added the word care. And it's so appropriate. We live in a city that's very small, 2.5 square miles, full of volunteers who love to care. Our children who are on federal assistance for food, lunches, they have to eat in the summertime too. So Bexley takes care of them. So as not to embarrass the kids who get federal funding, we had parents who got together and found a grant so that all of our kids can eat for free. Our sweet, caring residents insist that we put policy behind what they know is right. And in 2017, we put together an anti-discrimination ordinance. In 2019, we wrote a resolution and passed it to welcome refugees. And I'm most proud of our source of income legislation that I was able to write and advocate for and get passed. We are super proud of the fact that we did it and that the other municipalities around us, 4 of them, have adopted that as well. I like to say that people like to be like the cool kids. You know, they follow us. I've heard that diversity is asking people to the party, and inclusion is asking them to dance. And Bexley loves a good party. The more the merrier. We also know that when we ask people to dance, we all learn a new step. So.
Thank you very much. Calvin, next question is for you. Having heard all of this very compelling information that Rick gave and Lorianne's background, you also have a very interesting background yourself that we would love to hear about, and especially how your life experiences influenced your interest in real estate.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, and thank the audience for being with us today. And I appreciate that saying. I love that inclusion is asking people to dance. I hadn't heard the next part, so we all learn a new step. But I grew up here in Columbus. I went to Columbus Public Schools, so I love this city. And we live in a wonderful time. It's a wonderful time to be a human, in spite of what you see on TV. I mean, we have access to so much knowledge, and in spite of what you hear about Columbus Public Schools, I had access to tons of resources, tutors after school to teach me math, got to play the trumpet, the violin, the piano, had access to AP coursework, and then went on to Capital University in Bexley, and had wonderful professors who taught me research and took me under their wing, tons of mentors here, business leaders, politicians, and so much of my life, not growing up well off, but then finding a way to build a career for myself has been people reaching out and opening a door for me, and it's all about access and opportunity. So that's my core passion. That's why at Rhove, our mission is to expand access and opportunity for everyone to own in our communities, because ownership is so important. We want every renter to be an owner. We want everyone in the community to be an owner. And we know that when you have ownership, you care more, you invest more, you volunteer more, and you show up and invest in the community. And so what is more important than housing? It's a basic need. And if we look at our country and the problems that we face, we're facing an ownership crisis, particularly in housing. Millennials have $0 in net real estate wealth, zero, much less than previous generations. And this is a driver of wealth inequality. And we know that if we don't solve this problem, we will have civic unrest. We will have it. And that's something that even our founding fathers knew. John Adams wrote about this, our second president, and constitutional framer wrote that the balance of power. In order to maintain the balance of power on the side of equal liberty and public virtue, we must make land ownership available to everybody. And so it is of critical importance to our democracy that we solve this problem.
That's great. So I'm going to ask you a follow-up question then. So in your opinion, what is the role of property ownership in inclusive communities?
It's multifold. So for one, what stands in the way of solving this housing crisis? It's self-inflicted. We have more than enough resources and capital and ingenuity to provide food and shelter to every human being on earth. And so what stands in the way? And if you think about housing in America in our major cities that are growing like Columbus, it's often you've got this not in my backyard mindset that stands in the way of new development. Some of the policies that were mentioned that can help us expand the housing supply. And the people who show up, we have a democracy, which is awesome, so everybody can contribute. And the people who show up often are the loudest voices in the room, but they don't necessarily represent all of the people in the room, right? And so who's missing? Oftentimes, it's the people who are renters. It's the people who are renting now in a neighborhood, but it's also the people who are missing who will live in the neighborhood in the future. So I believe if we open up ownership and we make investing and owning real estate available to everybody, more people will participate. You will have more YIMBYs, yes, in my backyard, crowd in the room. That's missing. Ownership is missing from the YIMBY movement. And so we're seeing more people come together in every city, more for altruistic reasons, saying we need more housing for more people at every price point. Now imagine how powerful that movement's going to be when they can say, and I'll invest in that project.
Very good. So, having heard some of the information that Rick shared with us, and this is for any of the panelists that would like to answer this, we understand that not all suburbs want to see economic inclusion. What is the best response to those individuals?
I would say they're missing out. They're missing out on so much. It's the creativity that they're missing out on. It's the ability to problem solve from different angles. There's just so much that we miss out on when we don't include people.
If I can just piggyback on that, I mean, I think what you're saying is backed up by, mounds of research in addition to, your experience. It's, this is something that colleges figured out a long time ago. If you want to have an interesting discussion, you need people from different walks of life who come together to have that discussion. If everyone has a very similar background, the learning is not going to be as deep. The dialogue will not be nearly as interesting. And so opening up communities to racial, economic diversity, people who have had different life experiences will deepen the learning that goes on in schools and the learning that goes on among adults. We don't stop learning just because we reach a certain age. And so business has learned this a long time ago as well, that when you are trying to solve a problem, you bring people who have different points of view, different experiences, and so education has seen this, business has seen this, but we haven't taken the additional step to make sure that communities can benefit from all that diversity brings.
Our children really need this. To be able to make it in the world that they are being asked to be successful in, they need to have that diversity. And it makes them stronger people, and it opens their minds to new ideas and new cultures and new friends. And it makes, I know our children, my 3 children, have such a diverse group of friends, and I know my husband and I learned so much from what they have taught us, because that is the world that they're living in.
I think one other response would just be why? That's the question. We need to hear each other more. If you go to some of these neighborhood meetings, it's just yelling at each other, like, this is what I think, this is what I think. Sometimes we just got to ask why, and then unpack that 5 whys deep and hear people. And sometimes, so on a macro level, it's not zero sum, but sometimes on the micro level, there are trade-offs, and we need to hear people out. And then work together to address those concerns so that they can hear the stories about, once somebody feels heard, they're more receptive to hearing about the value in diversity or what we're proposing.
Thank you. So for those business leaders in the community, what is your response when the question is asked, why should businesses support the building of inclusive communities?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, it's
You all want to
multi.
jump into this one?
Yeah. So we live in a dynamic ecosystem. One of the lifebloods of business is talent, and we need diverse talent. And we all know that businesses are stronger when there's diversity at every level. And so that's one reason. The other reason is people choose to work with a company, but they also choose to move into a community, and people are whole people. And so one of the greatest amenities we can give to our workforce is a wonderful place to live.
And I'll just add that when employers are looking at trying to get the benefits of diversity and make sure they capitalize on that, one of the issues they run into is that employees haven't experienced diversity before the workplace. They haven't experienced it in their schools or in their neighborhoods. And so there are a lot of tensions. And actually, the number one reason that people are fired on the job is not because they're incompetent. It's because they can't get along with other people, oftentimes people of other, different backgrounds. And so many businesses have embraced diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace. But if we get at these issues earlier, when children are young, and if businesses can support that, then the work that they're doing to support diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace will be all that much easier. The other thing I want to mention quickly is, as relates to exclusionary zoning in particular, is that a lot of businesses throughout the country have begun to want to open up communities to more forms of housing because they're having trouble attracting employees given the cost of living. And this is particularly acute in places like California and the Bay Area, where all the Silicon Valley employers have banded together to support the YIMBY effort that Calvin mentioned, Yes in My Backyard, because they can't attract employees when housing's so expensive. And I know Columbus is not exactly where California is in terms of housing prices, but from what I'm reading, you're moving in that direction. Things are becoming much less affordable, and that's directly correlated to exclusionary zoning, because when you have a certain amount of land and you say, well, we're only going to allow a single-family home, maybe on a quarter acre, you can't build anything more, that artificially decreases the supply of housing. So just like OPEC tries to drive up oil prices by decreasing the supply of oil, single-family exclusionary zoning drives up housing prices and makes housing less affordable, and that's bad for everyone, but it's also bad for employers who are trying to attract talent.
Thank you. Calvin, to piggyback on what Rick just shared with us, can you tell us about the differences between typical real estate investors and the IMBYs that he talked about, the Yes in My Backyard you were attracting to your real estate investment platform?
Yeah, so one note, I know it doesn't seem like we're as bad as San Francisco, but I published an article about this in Forbes. If you look at the knowledge worker base and the middle class, the percentage of rent-burdened households in Columbus, Ohio is about the same as it is in San Francisco, right? When you take income to the price of rent. And if you're spending over a quarter of your income on rent, then you're rent burdened. And so that's an interesting note. But if you think about real estate finance, we're in the MySpace E-Trade days of investing in real estate online, and we're about to move into the Coinbase, Robinhood, Reddit days. And what's fascinating is people are coming together on the internet and they're having conversations and investing in public companies. And what that does to public companies is more and more people are thinking about ESG because of employee advocacy, customer advocacy, but now because of investors. And when we open the market up for the average person to invest as little as $1 in real estate, they're investing for return on investment reasons. Yes, that's table stakes, but so often we're investing for a return on community because we value things. In addition to things that fit nicely in a spreadsheet, we have additional values. And so that's gonna unlock a lot of creativity and ingenuity in real estate finance.
Thank you very much, Calvin. We're going to move 2 questions from our in-person and live stream audiences in just a moment, but I have one final question, and that's going to be for Lorianne. We heard Rick talk about Move to Prosper, and our theme today is the need for innovation in housing. So if you could share as a supporter of the housing, hospitality, or mobility program, Move to Prosper, what about the program is innovative, and what convinces you it can make a difference?
Well, it can make a difference. The data suggests that that's so true, that children who, and I think Rick spoke about this, children who at the age of 13 move from a community that is not thriving into a community that is thriving, they have so many more possibilities. I like to say they get the opportunity to become the best them they can be. From teenage pregnancy to their salaries as adults, all of those things add up to be something super positive. And Move to Prosper has proven already and gives an amazingly compelling argument for teaching women how to fish, not giving them fish, but teaching them how. And it's innovative because it embraces the mom, and we all know if the mom's not happy, if the mom's not thriving, the kids aren't either. And so, helping with coaching and, some of the things that some people learn early on how to budget your money, how to get a job, how to keep a job, how to write a resume, how to get your kids into a new environment, a new school environment, helping parents with IEPs and getting the children settled. It's not easy to supplement, to finance, to help finance a move, but that is what Move to Prosper is dedicated to doing, supplementing someone's housing such that they are able to not only move into a thriving community, but they can succeed in a thriving community. And it sounds so innovating and exciting to me as a member of a city that's landlocked, that's very hard to be able to figure out where and how we can accommodate. We're going to have to continue to think of exciting, innovative ways in Bexley, but my being able to support an organization like Move to Prosper makes me feel like I am making a difference in our region.
Thank you, Lorianne. It is CMC's longstanding tradition to take audience questions. Jane Scott of CMC is curating questions from the live stream audience. For our in-house audience, please join Jane at the microphone. We do ask that you keep your questions brief and to the point. Jane, what is our first question?
Well, we have quite a few questions, so please, anyone who does have a question, just get up behind me and we'll do every other one. Move to Prosper has been discussed a great deal. It's doing wonderful work. And the woman who, just for instance, the woman who moved from that neighborhood to a better neighborhood, what happens to the neighborhood? Do we give up on that neighborhood? And does the community still have a responsibility to improve that neighborhood so people don't have to move to a different neighborhood?
Hard question, and I'm sure both of you would agree with that. You know, as I legislate, I always say that I never take my mom hat off. And I always want the best for my children. And by my children, I don't mean my own, but the children I'll never meet. And I believe in giving women a choice as to where they think their children will thrive. And it's a very philosophical question about the neighborhood that they're leaving behind, but as far as I'm concerned, when you become a mom, that's your number one. And it's a yes and. It's a yes, we need to make sure that women have their choice. No, we should not leave the neighborhood behind, but we need to give these women choices as to where they think that their children would survive.
And that choice is so important. I'd say my mom, she went through a few divorces, so she's college educated, but when we were on public assistance, it was because of that transition period. And she worked really hard to ensure that we weren't in a bad neighborhood for more than a year, and wanted to get us to a place where we cannot be as distracted by violence and other things. And so it's important to give people a choice. The solution isn't to limit the choice for people who can't afford it. Why should people who are wealthy and middle class have more freedom to move than people who are poor? They shouldn't. We should have the choice. It's a yes and thing, and we need to come together to improve that neighborhood that's being left behind so that people choose to move there.
Hello, my name is.
Just really quickly, this has been the classic debate, in housing policy circles for decades. Do you invest in high poverty communities, or do you allow choice? And I agree with both of you. That you have to do both, but I don't think anyone was suggesting Move to Prosper is the only answer to this set of problems, but it's got to be part of the solution to allow for choice for families. I mean, when I was studying the program, I found that, was astonished that there were 10 spots open, and there was a question, would people want to potentially subject their kids to discrimination in the more affluent areas? Would people want this? 300 people applied. So there's demand for this, and we have to honor that, and at the same time, make sure we invest in communities that are struggling now and attract economic and racial cross-section throughout the metropolitan area. So, sorry.
Thank you. Name is Valerie Gilbert. I moved to the South Side a couple of years ago, and if I'm to believe the real estate online sites, My property is doubled in value. And my question is, how do we stem the tide of gentrification that's, in my opinion, inhibits the home ownership opportunities, particularly in the poorer neighborhoods?
So the word STEM, progress, right? Stasis isn't an option. If we think about it, Ryan Holiday is one of my favorite authors, and he writes about Stoicism, and he distills it down into everyday language, because Marcus Aurelius is hard to read. But my favorite book of his is The Obstacle is the Way. The obstacle is the way. And when you think about that, almost every problem is the result of solving a previous problem. So it comes out of a solution, right? So we're like, man, what about divestment in our community? Why won't people build here? Where are the jobs? Where are we gonna work? Why can't my kids go here? There's a food desert, right? Solve that problem. Boom, now you have development, right? So the problem of gentrification is the solution to the last problem. And so the solution isn't to go backwards, it's to go forwards and figure out, how do we reimagine housing finance? Why can't everybody own a piece of real estate with $1? They can now. Download the Rhove app.
So Alicia Gregory asks, what are some actionable items we can do as individuals? What are actionable items we can encourage our cities to do if they are not involved in this conversation already?
Well, individuals could volunteer for Move to Prosper. We would love that, especially if you've got some special talents that we could use. And I also think that individuals can write their local representatives, ask them, stay on them, bring them information. That's what Amy Claiborne did to me. She brought information to me. She stayed with me. She educated me. She made sure that I was passionate about it. I was telling Rick that I had heard that there are 2 days in your life that should be your favorite days. The day you were born and the day that you learned why you were born. I feel like housing and helping other moms, make a better life for their babies is what I potentially have been called to do. And I've always been serving children. And people that know me know my dear love for these little people and their little minds and the possibilities that they have. So I would urge individuals to volunteer in situations and advocacy situations like Move to Prosper, and to make sure that you have the ear of your local government officials.
Next question.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Wayhoff of Steptoe and Johnson, PLC. And the Opportunity Zone legislation that occurred and has been utilized in various areas is now a number of years old. And I was just wondering if any of the panelists had a good handle on whether or not that's had a positive effect in the areas on the map that was shown earlier today, as far as, more prosperity in those areas, more good redevelopment where the folks that live there now can continue to live and work there. I know our Rotary Club is doing a lot of things in the Linden area, for example, and, but this government program, the Opportunity Zones, what effect has that had on, if any, on those areas? Thank you.
Well, our legislation is brand new as of October, and I know that the 6 other cities in Ohio, it's fairly new for them too. So I think that's something that we're going to have to watch. And as a fellow Rotarian, I know that we all try very much to help in lots of ways when we do service of self. I'm looking at yet another Rotarian in the crowd. But I don't know, Rick, can you speak to some older legislation that's been on the,
Yeah, well, so there's federal legislation to provide tax breaks to individuals and companies that are going to invest in high poverty communities. I don't want to claim to be an expert on how well that has worked certainly in Columbus. Nationally, there's been some research to suggest skepticism on how effective these programs have been, and so I'll leave it at that.
We have time for one more question.
Brian Williams, Local Nexus, freelance writer and consultant. I have, we've kind of had this theme of getting back into reinvestment in existing communities. Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission a couple years ago had a speaker who talked about self-gentrification, and what that gets to is how do we rebuild neighborhoods in a way that the people living there now share in any new wealth that is created in those neighborhoods. You know, that's a way to kind of stave off the gentrification. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Anyway, so Move to Prosper would have been a godsend for my mom. Anna Mayo would have loved Move to Prosper. I mean, I love how you framed it about mothers. People wake up and most people are thinking about opportunity. How am I going to feed my family? People want access to education, access to job, and safety. We want safety. And people aren't necessarily bound by these maps thinking about, oh, it has to happen in these 4 blocks, right? And so I think it's so important to just think beyond just these buzz terms like gentrification and recreate how we finance things, how we haven't innovated on housing finance in like a century. It's crazy. What is a 30-year mortgage? Is that where it stops? That was invented by somebody. We can invent something else. Low-income tax credits was invented by somebody. We can invent something else. And there is a movement to innovate in finance right now. It's happening in decentralized finance. And so I would say, how do we ensure that everybody has ownership? The answer is to innovate and unleash human creativity. And if there's a problem, the obstacle is the way. Let's create a new financial instrument, one that everybody can access and benefit from and participate in.
That has to be the final word, unfortunately. We wish we had more time, but we'll turn it back over to CMC Presiding Officer Eddie Pauline for concluding remarks.
Well, great conversation today. I always like to leave these luncheons with a little bit of homework, and I think we heard about the importance that local government plays in addressing this issue. We have an election coming up on November 2nd. I would encourage all of you to take a hard look at those running for office and investigate their stance on diversifying housing stock, inclusive housing, zoning, and ensure that we're supporting people that are open to changing some of these policies at the local level. So, piece of homework for you. Please make plans now to join us next Wednesday as CMC welcomes Columbus Chief of Police Elaine Bryant to our stage for a special one-on-one interview. Thank you again to today's forum sponsors, AARP Ohio, Central Ohio Community Improvement Corporation, the Columbus Foundation, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, Move to Prosper, Nationwide Children's Hospital, the Ohio State University, United Way of Central Ohio. Thank you to the Emergency Response Fund of the Columbus Foundation for presenting our live stream in partnership with the Columbus Dispatch and PNC. And thank you to our online virtual seat patrons. And our special appreciation and thanks to our speakers, Richard Kahlenberg, Lori Ann Feibel, Calvin Cooper, and our host, Kim Campbell. Thank you all for joining us. We could not do this without you. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday as the Columbus Metropolitan Club presents another community conversation. Thank you.